What are the skills necessary to develop diversity-conscious leadership? That's exactly what we're going to cover in this session. Firstly, let's talk about some myths. The first myth is that diversity-conscious leaders are naturally people persons. That's absolutely incorrect. Diversity-conscious leaders are those that are conscious of the ways in which they can leverage diversities as strengths, right? And through this course, you've gleaned some skills and some components that you can use in your workplace, some of which are going to be on the next slides, to actually make the workplace a more inclusive and productive place, right? So you don't have to be naturally good at anything. You just have to know the tools that you can use to make this happen. So that's first myth debunked. The second myth is that diversity-conscious leadership is a rare ability. Once again, there is nothing rare about this. In this course, you've learned some valuable skills and insights that you can then apply to your workplace, right? And so using those skills makes it something that's mainstream rather than rare. So myth 2, debunked. 3, diversity-conscious leaders are intellectually brilliant. This is an incredibly misleading myth. And here's why. Diversity consciousness has nothing to do with intellect and everything to do with your experience in the world. Understanding that you have a family and that you have close relationships and that you exist in a society is not rocket science. However, understanding how those things connect, how the society connects to your family and how your family connects to you is really, really important. And that's what this course has been all about. It's simple and it has tools that can help you think through these pieces. So I'm going to totally debunk myth 3. Myth 4, diversity-conscious leaders are charismatic extroverts. In fact, the most powerful leaders in any organization are not those who have to tell you that they're leaders at all. Diversity-conscious leaders are those that have a commitment to being aware of the ways in which power plays out in their organization and being brave and courageous enough to make changes when necessary. Finally, diversity-conscious leaders must be able to persuade and control people despite differences. Diversity consciousness is not about controlling anyone. Being a leader is about bringing out the best in everyone. And so understanding the differences in the way that these things play out can actually make you less of a control freak and more about trying to control the outcomes and not the people. Because that's what leadership is about. Making sure that we achieve the outcomes and not making sure that we spend all our time trying to control people and be someone that takes them in directions that they don't want to go in, right? Okay, so those are the myths totally debunked. What are the skills you need? These are the 3 things that you should set as professional development goals, informal goals in some ways. The first one is adaptation. A diversity-conscious leader is someone who understands that life requires flexibility. So as a leader, you are thinking about ways in which you can adapt your practice to meet the needs of people, meeting your direct reports where they are and taking them to where they can be. That requires some adaptation right there. The second thing is thinking and communicating inclusively. Thinking about the ways in which you bring people in rather than push people out, both in the things that you say and the things that you do, okay? Let me give you an example. There's a phrase that's called radical hospitality. Thinking about the ways in which people feel like they're included in a space, taking that extra effort to perhaps sit at the lunchroom next to someone that you have not spoken to before, introducing yourself to someone who may be visiting the organization, being culturally aware about holidays and certain religious days of importance for certain people, and asking them about how that went. Communicating in that way says to that person that they are valued, that they are affirmed, and they're more likely to trust you and to work with you. Third, and most important piece, is assessing and monitoring, opening up communication about how people are feeling in the organization and the ways in which certain policies and practices impact them. Let me give you some practical tools. Number 1, it is important to make sure that people across lines of race, class, sexual orientation, and gender are paid the same for the roles that they perform. So there is a very, very strong practice of paying men more than women, even though those two groups may be performing the same job. So it's important to address that and monitor that as a leader. Number two, it's important to understand the ways in which families impact the organization. So for example, when a woman is pregnant and has to go through certain processes to make sure that her baby is happy and healthy, this is an opportunity for you as a leader in your organization to interrogate policies that might make it difficult for her to fully function in the organization. And secondly, once the baby is born, to really nurture and take care of that baby. And so you would have to think about whether accommodations are being made for those people. So you need to assess and monitor. Finally, it's important to lay down some hard goals around diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's important to think about how many people of different groups are included in your organization and to set goals around those things and actively recruit those things. So for example, making sure that your interview pool is incredibly diverse is a very, very helpful start for your recruitment team. For your HR team, they need to be trained in cultural sensitivity, and they need to fulfill certain professional development metrics in order to be equipped to deal with diverse perspectives and situations that might occur in the organization. And finally, there needs to be a safe space for people to be able to share their experiences of the organization, both with you and with others. And you need to make sure that that space is both safe and that you're able to monitor that space so that it is kept safe and it is kept a place where people can fully bring themselves. So these are some tools and skills that you can use as the leader to develop your diversity consciousness.